Dolphin's Way by Gordon R. Dickson. Originally published in the June 1964 issue of Analog magazine, some of its many anthology appearances include Rod Serling's Other Worlds in 1978, The Best Animal Stories of Science Fiction and Fantasy in 1979, From Heinlein to Here in the same year, and The Evolution of Hard SF in 1994. Appearances in collections of the author's stories include Danger, Human in 1970, The Book of Gordon Dickson in 1973, Gordon R. Dickson's SF Best in 1978, and In the Bone in 1987. Read by Darrell T. Smith II for my channel Quasar Spectra. Dolphin's Way. Of course, there was no reason why a woman coming to Dolphin's Way, as the late Dr. Edwin Knight had named the island research station, should not be beautiful. But Mal had never expected such a thing to happen. Castor and Pollux had not come to the station pool this morning. They might have left the station, as other wild dolphins had in the past, and Mal nowadays carried always with him the fear that the Willerny Foundation would seize on some excuse to cut off their funds for further research. Ever since Corwin Brait had taken over, Mal had known this fear, though Brait had said nothing. It was only a feeling Mal got from the presence of the tall, cold man. So it was that Mal was out in front of the station, scanning the ocean when the water taxi from the mainland brought the visitor. She stepped out on the dock as he stared down at her. She waved as if she knew him and then climbed the stairs from the dock to the terrace in front of the door to the main building of the station. "Hello," she said, smiling as she stopped in front of him. "You're Corwin Brait?" Mal was suddenly sharply conscious of his own lean and ordinary appearance in contrast to her startling beauty. She was brown-haired and tall for a girl, but those things did not describe her. There was a perfection to her, and her smile stirred him strangely. "No," he said. "I'm Malcolm Sinclair, Corwin's inside." "I'm Jane Wilson," she said. "Background Monthly sent me out to do a story on the dolphins. Do you work with them?" "Yes," Mal said. "I started with Dr. Knight in the beginning." "Oh, good," she said. "Then you can tell me some things. You were here when Dr. Brait took charge after Dr. Knight's death?" "Mr. Brait," he corrected automatically. "Yes." The emotion she moved in him was so deep and strong it seemed she must feel it too, but she gave no sign. "Mr. Brait?" she echoed. "Oh, how did the staff take to him?" "Well," said Mal, wishing she would smile again, "everyone took to him." "I see," she said. "He's a good research head?" "A good administrator," said Mal. "He's not involved in the research end." "He's not?" She stared at him. "But didn't he replace Dr. Knight after Dr. Knight's death?" "Why, yes," said Mal. He made an effort to bring his attention back to the conversation. He had never had a woman affect him like this before. "But just as administrator of the station here. You see, most of our funds for work here come from the Willerny Foundation. They had faith in Dr. Knight, but when he died, well, they wanted someone of their own in charge. None of us mind." "Willerny Foundation," she said. "I don't know it." "It was set up by a man named Willerny in St. Louis, Missouri," said Mal. "He made his money manufacturing kitchen utensils. When he died, he left a trust and set up the foundation to encourage basic research." Mal smiled. "Don't ask me how he got from kitchen utensils to that. That's not much information for you, is it?" "It's more than I had a minute ago," she smiled back. "Did you know Corwin Brait before he came here?" "No." Mal shook his head. "I don't know many people outside the biological and zoological fields." "I imagine you know him pretty well now, though, after the 6 months he's been in charge." "Well," Mal hesitated, "I wouldn't say I know him well at all. You see, he's up here in the office all day long, and I'm down with Pollux and Castor, the two wild dolphins we've got coming to the station now. Corwin and I don't see each other much. On this small island? I suppose it seems funny, but we're both pretty busy. I guess you would be." She smiled again. "Will you take me to him?" "Him?" Mal awoke suddenly to the fact they were still standing on the terrace. "Oh, yes, it's Corwin you came to see." "Not just Corwin," she said. "I came to see the whole place." "Well, I'll take you into the office. Come along." He led her across the terrace and in through the front door into the air-conditioned coolness of the interior. Corwin Brait ran the air conditioning constantly, as if his own somewhat icy personality demanded the dry, distant coldness of a mountain atmosphere. Mal led Jane Wilson down a short corridor and through another door into a large, wide-windowed office. A tall, slim, broad-shouldered man with black hair and a brown, coldly handsome face looked up from a large desk and got to his feet on seeing Jane. "Corwin," said Mal, "this is Miss Jane Wilson from Background Monthly." "Yes," said Corwin expressionlessly to Jane, coming around the desk to them. "I got a wire yesterday you were coming." He did not wait for Jane to offer her hand, but offered his own. Their fingers met. "I've got to be getting down to Castor and Pollux," said Mal, turning away. "I'll see you later, then," Jane said, looking over at him. "Why, yes, maybe," he said. He went out. As he closed the door of Brait's office behind him, he paused for a moment in the dim, cool hallway and shut his eyes. "Don't be a fool," he told himself. "A girl like that can do a lot better than someone like you, and probably has already." He opened his eyes and went back down to the pool behind the station and non-human world of the dolphins. When he got there, he found that Castor and Pollux were back. Their pool was an open one with egress to the open blue waters of the Caribbean. In the first days of the research at Dolphin's Way, the dolphins had been confined in a closed pool like any captured wild animal. It was only later on, when the work at the station had come up against what Knight had called the environmental barrier, that the notion was conceived of opening the pool to the sea so that the dolphins they had been working with could leave or stay as they wished. They had left, but they had come back. Eventually, they had left for good, but strangely, wild dolphins had come from time to take their place, so that there were always dolphins at the station. Castor and Pollux were the latest pair. They had showed up some 4 months ago after a single dolphin frequenting the station had disappeared. Free, independent, they had been most cooperative, but the barrier had not been breached. Now they were sliding back and forth past each other underwater, utilizing the full 30-yard length of the pool, passing beside, over, and under each other, their 7-foot, nearly identical bodies almost, but not quite, rubbing as they passed. The tape showed them to be talking together up in the supersonic range, 80 to 120 kilocycles per second. Their pattern of movement in the water now was something he had never seen before. It was regular and ritualistic as a dance. He sat down and put on the earphones connected to the hydrophones underwater at each end of the pool. He spoke into the microphone, asking them about their movements, but they ignored him and kept on with the patterned swimming. The sound of footsteps behind him made him turn. He saw Jane Wilson approaching down the concrete steps from the back door of the station with the stocky, overalled figure of Pete Edant, the station mechanic. "Here he is," said Pete as they came up. "I've got to get back now." "Thank you." She gave Pete the smile that had so moved Mal earlier. Pete turned and went back up the steps. She turned to Mal. "Am I interrupting something?" "No." He took off the earphones. "I wasn't getting any answers anyway." She looked at the two dolphins in their underwater dance with the liquid surface swirling above them as they turned now this way, now that, just under it. "Answers?" she said. He smiled a little ruefully. "We call them answers," he said. He nodded at the two smoothly streamlined shapes turning in the pool. "Sometimes we can ask questions and get responses." "Informative responses?" she asked. "Sometimes. You wanted to see me about something?" "About everything," she said. "It seems you're the man I came to talk to, not Brait. He sent me down here. I understand you're the one with the theory." "Theory?" he said warily, feeling his heart sink inside him. "The notion, then," she said. "The idea that if there is some sort of interstellar civilization, it might be waiting for the people of Earth to qualify themselves before making contact. And that test might not be a technological one, like developing a faster-than-light means of travel, but a sociological one, like learning to communicate with an alien culture, a culture like that of the dolphins." He interrupted harshly. "Corwin told you this?" "I'd heard about it before I came," she said. "I'd thought it was Brait's theory, though." "No," said Mal. "It's mine." He looked at her. "You aren't laughing." "Should I laugh?" she said. She was attentively watching the dolphins' movements. Suddenly he felt sharp jealousy of them for holding her attention, and the emotion pricked him to something he might not otherwise have had the courage to do. "Fly over to the mainland with me," he said, "and have lunch. I'll tell you all about it." "All right." She looked up from the dolphins at him at last, and he was surprised to see her frowning. "There's a lot I don't understand," she murmured. "I thought it was Brait I had to learn about, but it's you and the dolphins." "Maybe we can clear that up at lunch, too," Mal said, not quite clear what she meant, but not greatly caring either. "Come on, the helicopters are around the north side of the building." They flew a copter across to Carupana and sat down to lunch looking out at the shipping in the open roadstead of the azure sea before the town, while the polite Spanish of Venezuelan voices sounded from the tables around them. "Why should I laugh at your theory?" she said again when they were settled and eating lunch. "Most people take it to be a crackpot excuse for our failure at the station," he said. Her brown, arched brows rose. "Failure?" she said. "I thought you were making steady progress." "Yes and no," he said. "Even before Dr. Knight died, we ran into something he called the environmental barrier." "Environmental barrier?" "Yes." Mal poked with his fork at the shrimp in his seafood cocktail. "This work of ours all grew out of the work done by Dr. John Lilly. You read his book, Man and Dolphin?" "No," she said. He looked at her, surprised. "He was the pioneer in this research with dolphins," Mal said. "I'd have thought reading his book would have been the first thing you would have done before coming down here." "The first thing I did," she said, "was try to find out something about Corwin Brait, and I was pretty unsuccessful at that. That's why I landed here, with the notion that it was he, not you, who was the real worker with the dolphins. That's why you asked me if I knew much about him?" "That's right," she answered. "But tell me about this environmental barrier." "There's not a great deal to tell," he said. "Like most big problems, it's simple enough to state. At first, in working with the dolphins, it seemed the early researchers were going great guns and communication was just around the corner, a matter of interpreting the sounds they made to each other in the humanly audible range and above it, and teaching the dolphins human speech. It turned out those things couldn't be done. Well, they could. They were done, or as nearly so as makes no difference. But then we came up against the fact that communication doesn't mean understanding." He looked at her. "You and I talk the same language, but do we really understand perfectly what the other person means when he speaks to us?" She looked at him for a moment and then slowly shook her head without taking her eyes off his face. "Well," said Mal, "that's essentially our problem with the dolphins, only on a much larger scale. Dolphins, like Castor and Pollux, can talk with me, and I with them, but we can't understand each other to any great degree. You mean intellectually understood, don't you? Jane said. Not just mechanically. That's right, Mal answered. We agree on denotation of an auditory or other symbol, but not on connotation. I can say to Castor, the Gulf Stream is a strong ocean current, and he'll agree exactly, but neither of us really has the slightest idea of what the other really means. My mental image of the Gulf Stream is not Castor's image. My notion of powerful is relative to the fact I'm 6 feet tall, weigh 175 pounds, and can lift my own weight against the force of gravity. Castor's is relative to the fact that he is 7 feet long, can speed up to 40 miles an hour through the water, and as far as he knows, weighs nothing, since his 400 pounds of body weight are balanced out by the equal weight of the water he displaces. And the concept of lifting something is all but unknown to him. My mental abstraction of ocean is not his, and our ideas of what a current is may coincide, or be literally worlds apart in meaning, and so far we've found no way of bridging the gap between us. The dolphins have been trying as well as you? I believe so, said Mal, but I can't prove it. Any more than I can really prove the dolphins' intelligence to hardcore skeptics until I can come up with something previously outside human knowledge that the dolphins have taught me, or have them demonstrate that they've learned the use of some human intellectual process. And in these things we've all failed, because, as I believe, and Dr. Knight believed, of the connotative gap, which is a result of the environmental barrier. She sat watching him. He was probably a fool to tell her all this, but he had had no one to talk to like this since Dr. Knight's heart attack 8 months before, and he felt words threatening to pour out of him. We've got to learn to think like the dolphins, he said, or the dolphins have to learn to think like us. For nearly 6 years now we've been trying, and neither side succeeded. Almost before he thought, he added the one thing he had been determined to keep to himself. I've been afraid our research funds will be cut off any day now. Cut off? By the Willerny Foundation? She said. Why would they do that? Because we haven't made any progress for so long, Mal said bitterly, or at least no provable progress. I'm afraid time's just about run out, and if it runs out, it may never be picked up again. 6 years ago, there was a lot of popular interest in the dolphins. Now they've been discounted and forgotten, shelved as merely bright animals. You can't be sure the research won't be picked up again. But I feel it, he said. It's part of my notion about the ability to communicate with an alien race being the test for us humans. I feel we've got this one chance, and if we flub it, we'll never have another. He pounded the table softly with his fist. The worst of it is, I know the dolphins are trying just as hard to get through from their side. If I could only recognize what they're doing, how they're trying to make me understand. Jane had been sitting watching him. You seem pretty sure of that, she said. What makes you so sure? He unclenched his fist and forced himself to sit back in his chair. Have you ever looked into the jaws of a dolphin? He said. They're this long. He spread his hands apart in the air to illustrate. And each pair of jaws contains 88 sharp teeth. Moreover, a dolphin like Castor weighs several hundred pounds and can move at water speeds that are almost incredible to a human. He could crush you easily by ramming you against the side of a tank if he didn't want to tear you apart with his teeth, or break your bones with blows of his flukes. He looked at her grimly. In spite of all this, in spite of the fact that men have caught and killed dolphins, even we killed them in our early fumbling researches, and dolphins are quite capable of using their teeth and strength on marine enemies, no dolphin has ever been known to attack a human being. Aristotle, writing in the 4th century BC, speaks of the, quote, gentle and kindly end, quote, nature of the dolphin. He stopped and looked at Jane sharply. You don't believe me, he said. Yes, she said. Yes, I do. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry, he said. I've made the mistake of mentioning all this before to other people, and been sorry I did. I told this to one man who gave me his opinion that it indicated that the dolphin instinctively recognized human superiority and the value of human life. Mal grinned at her harshly. But it was just an instinct. Like dogs, he said. Dogs instinctively admire and love people. And he'd wanted to tell me about a dachshund he'd had named Poochie, who could read the morning newspaper and wouldn't bring it into him if there was a tragedy reported on the front page. He could prove this, and Poochie's intelligence, by the number of times he'd had to get the paper off the front step himself. Jane laughed. It was a low, happy laugh, and it took the bitterness suddenly out of Mal. Anyway, said Mal, the dolphin's restraint with humans is just one of the indications, like the wild dolphins coming to us here at the station, that have convinced me the dolphins are trying to understand us, too, and have been, maybe, for centuries. I don't see why you worry about the research stopping, she said. With all you know, can't you convince people? There's only one person I've got to convince, said Mal, and that's Corwin Brait. And I don't think I'm doing it. It's just a feeling, but I feel as if he's sitting in judgment upon me and the work. I feel, Mal hesitated, almost as if he's a hatchet man. He isn't, Jane said. He can't be. I'll find out for you if you like. There are ways of doing it. I'd have the answer for you right now if I'd thought of him as an administrator. But I thought of him as a scientist, and I looked him up in the wrong places. Mal frowned at her unbelievingly. You don't actually mean you can find out that for me? He asked. She smiled. Wait and see, she replied. I'd like to know myself what his background is. It could be important, he said eagerly. I know it sounds fantastic, but if I'm right, the research with the dolphins could be important, more important than anything else in the world. She stood up suddenly from the table. I'll go and start checking up right now, she said. Why don't you go on back to the island? It'll take me a few hours, and I'll take the water taxi over. But you haven't finished lunch yet, he said. In fact, you haven't even started lunch. Let's eat first, then you can go. I want to call some people and catch them while they're still at work, she said. It's the time difference on these long-distance calls. I'm sorry. We'll have dinner together tonight. Will that do? It'll have to, he said. She melted his disappointment with one of her amazing smiles and went. With her gone, Mal found he was not hungry himself. He got hold of the waiter and managed to cancel the main course of their meals. He sat and had 2 more drinks, not something usual for him. Then he left and flew the copter back to the island. Peter Adent encountered him as he was on his way from the copter park to the dolphin pool. There you are, said Pete. Corwin wants to see you in an hour. When he gets back, that is. He's gone over to the mainland himself. Ordinarily, such a piece of news would have awakened the foreboding about cancellation of the research that rode always like a small, cold metal weight inside Mal. But the total of 3 drinks and no lunch had anesthetized him somewhat. He nodded and went on to the pool. The dolphins were still there, still at their patterned swimming. Or was he just imagining the pattern? Mal sat down on his chair by the poolside before the tape recorder, which set down a visual pattern of the sounds made by the dolphins. He put the earphones to the hydrophones on, switching on the mic before him. Suddenly it struck him how futile all this was. He had gone through these same motions daily for 4 years now, and what was the sum total of results he had to show for it? reel on reel of tape recording a fail to hold any truly productive conversation with the dolphins. He took the earphones off and laid them aside. He lit a cigarette and sat gazing with half-seeing eyes at the underwater ballet of the dolphins. To call it ballet was almost to libel their actions. The gracefulness, the purposefulness of their movements, buoyed up by the salt water, was beyond that of any human in air or on land. He thought again of what he had told Jane Wilson about the dolphins' refusal to attack their human captors, even when the humans hurt or killed them. He thought of the now established fact that dolphins will come to the rescue of one of their own who has been hurt or knocked unconscious and hold him up on top of the water so he would not drown. The dolphin's breathing process requiring conscious control so that it failed if the dolphin became unconscious. He thought of their playfulness, their affection, the wide and complex range of their speech. In any of those categories, the average human stacked up beside them looked pretty poor. In the dolphin culture, there was no visible impulse to war, to murder, to hatred and unkindness. No wonder, thought Mal, they and we have trouble understanding each other. In a different environment, under different conditions, they're the kind of people we've always struggled to be. We have the technology, the tool-using capability, but with it all, in many ways, we're more animal than they are. Who's to judge which of us is better? He thought, looking at their movements through the water with the slight hazy melancholy induced by the 3 drinks on an empty stomach. I might be happier myself if I were a dolphin. For a second, the idea seemed deeply attractive. The endless open sea, the freedom, an end to all the complex structure of human culture on land. A few lines of poetry came back to him. "Come, children," he quoted out loud to himself, "let us away, down and away, below." He saw the 2 dolphins pause in their underwater ballet and saw that the microphone before him was on. Their heads turned toward the microphone underwater at the near end of the pool. He remembered the following lines, and he quoted them aloud to the dolphins. "Now, my brothers, call from the bay. Now the great winds shoreward blow. Now the salt tides seaward flow. Now the wild white horses play, champ and chafe and toss in the spray." He broke off suddenly, feeling self-conscious. He looked down at the dolphins. For a moment they merely hung where they were under the surface, facing the microphone. Then Castor turned and surfaced. His forehead, with its blowhole, broke out into the air, and then his head, as he looked up at Mal. His airborne voice from the blowhole's sensitive lips and muscles spoke quacking words at the human. "Come, Mal," he quacked. "Let us away. Down and away, below." The head of Pollux surfaced beside Castor's. Mal stared at them for a long second. Then he jerked his gaze back to the tape of the recorder. There on it was the rhythmic record of his own voice as it had sounded in the pool. And below it, on their separate tracks, the tapes showed parallel rhythms coming from the dolphins. They had been matching his speech largely in the inaudible range while he was quoting. Still staring, Mal got to his feet, his mind trembling with a suspicion so great he hesitated to put it into words. Like a man in a daze, he walked to the near end of the pool, where 3 steps led down into the shallower part. Here the water was only 3 feet deep. "Come, Mal," quacked Castor, as the 2 still hung in the water with their heads out, facing him. "Let us away. Down and away, below." Step by step, Mal went down into the pool. He felt the coolness of the water wetting his pants legs, rising to his waist as he stood at last on the pool floor. A few feet in front of him, the 2 dolphins hung in the water, facing him, waiting. Standing with the water rippling lightly above his belt buckle, Mal looked at them, waiting for some sign, some signal of what they wanted him to do. They gave him no clue. They only waited. It was up to him to go forward on his own. He sloshed forward into deeper water and put his head down, held his breath, and pushed himself off underwater. In the forefront of his blurred vision, he saw the grainy concrete floor of the pool. He glided slowly over it, rising a little, and suddenly the two dolphins were all about him, gliding over, above, around his own underwater floating body, brushing lightly against him as they passed, making him a part of their underwater dance. He heard the creaking that was one of the underwater sounds they made, and knew that they were probably talking in ranges he could not hear. He could not know what they were saying. He could not sense the meaning of their movements about him, but the feeling that they were trying to convey information to him was inescapable. He began to feel the need to breathe. He held out as long as he could, then let himself rise to the surface. He broke water and gulped air, and the two dolphin heads popped up nearby, watching him. He dove under the surface again. "I am a dolphin," he told himself almost desperately. "I am not a man, but a dolphin, and to me all this means what?" Several times he dove, and each time the persistent and disciplined movements of the dolphins about him underwater convinced him more strongly that he was on the right track. He came up, blowing, at last. He was not carrying the attempt to be like them far enough, he thought. He turned and swam back to the steps at the shallow end of the pool and began to climb out. "Come, Mal, let us away," quacked a dolphin voice behind him, and he turned to see the heads of both Castor and Pollux out of the water, regarding him with mouths open urgently. "Come, children, down and away," he repeated as reassuringly as he could intonate the words. He hurried up to the big cabinet of the supply locker at the near end of the pool and opened the door of the section on skin diving equipment. He needed to make himself more like a dolphin. He considered the air tanks and the mask of the scuba equipment and rejected them. The dolphins could not breathe underwater any more than he could. He started jerking things out of the cabinet. A minute or so later, he returned to the steps in swimming trunks, wearing a glass mask with a snorkel tube and swim fins on his feet. In his hand, he carried 2 lengths of soft rope. He sat down on the steps and with the rope tied his knees and ankles together. Then, clumsily, he hopped and splashed into the water. Lying face down in the pool, staring at the bottom through his glass faceplate, he tried to move his bound legs together like the flukes of a dolphin to drive himself slantingly down under the surface. After a moment or two, he managed it. In a moment, the dolphins were all about him as he tried to swim underwater, dolphin-wise. After a little while, his air ran short again, and he had to surface. But he came up like a dolphin and lay on the surface, filling his lungs, before fanning himself down fluke fashion with his swim fins. "Think like a dolphin," he kept repeating to himself over and over. "I am a dolphin, and this is my world. This is the way it is." And Castor and Pollux were all about him. The sun was setting in the far distance of the ocean when at last he dragged himself, exhausted, up the steps of the pool and sat down on the poolside. To his water-soaked body the twilight breeze felt icy. He unbound his legs, took off his fins and mask, and walked wearily to the cabinet. From the nearest compartment he took a towel and dried himself, then put on an old bathrobe he kept hanging there. He sat down in an aluminum deck chair beside the cabinet and sighed with weariness. He looked out at the red sun dipping its lower edge in the sea and felt a great warm sensation of achievement inside him. In the darkening pool, the 2 dolphins still swam back and forth. He watched the sun descending. "Mal!" The sound of Corwin Brait's voice brought his head around. When he saw the tall, cold-faced man was coming toward him with the slim figure of Jane alongside, Mal got up quickly from his chair. They came up to him. "Why didn't you come to see me as I asked?" Brait said. I left word for you with Pete. I didn't even know you were back from the mainland until the water taxi brought Miss Wilson out just now, and she told me." "I'm sorry," said Mal. "I think I've run into something here." "Never mind telling me now." Brait's voice was hurried and sharpened with annoyance. "I had a good deal to speak to you about, but there's not time now if I'm to catch the mainland plane to St. Louis. I'm sorry to break it this way." He checked himself and turned to Jane. "Would you excuse us, Miss Wilson? Private business. If you'll give us a second." "Of course," she said. She turned and walked away from them alongside the pool into the deepening twilight. The dolphins paced her in the water. The sun was just down now, and with the sudden oncoming of tropical night, stars could be seen overhead. "Just let me tell you," said Mal. "It's about the research." "I'm sorry," said Brait. "There's no point in your telling me now. I'll be gone a week, and I want you to watch out for this Jane Wilson. Here." He lowered his voice slightly. "I talked to Background Monthly on the phone this morning, and the editor I spoke to there didn't know about the article or recognize her name." "Somebody new?" said Mal. "Probably someone who didn't know her. At any rate, it makes no difference," said Brait. "As I say, I'm sorry to tell you in such a rushed fashion, but Willerny has decided to end its grant of funds to the station. I'm flying to St. Louis to settle details." He hesitated. "I'm sure you knew something like this was coming, Mal." Mal stared. "It was inevitable," said Brait coldly. "You knew that." He paused. "I'm sorry." "But the station'll fold without the Willerny support," said Mal, finding his voice. "You know that, and just today I found out what the answer is, just this afternoon. Listen to me." He caught Brait's arm as the other started to turn away. "The dolphins have been trying to contact us. Oh, not at first, not when we experimented with captured specimens, but since we opened the pool to the sea. The only trouble was we insisted on trying to communicate by sound alone, and that's all but impossible for them." "Excuse me," said Brait, trying to disengage his arm. "Listen, will you?" said Mal desperately. "Their communication process is an incredibly rich one. It's as if you and I communicated by using all the instruments in a symphony orchestra. They not only use sound from 4 to 150 kilocycles per second, they use movement and touch, and all of it in reference to the ocean conditions surrounding them at the moment. I've got to go. Just a minute. Don't you remember what Lilly hypothecated about the dolphins' methods of navigation? He suggested that it was a multivariable method, using temperature, speed, taste of the water, position of the stars, sun, and so forth, all fed into their brains simultaneously and instantaneously. Obviously, it's true, and obviously their process of communication is also a multivariable method utilizing sound, touch, position, place, and movement. Now that we know this, we can go into the sea with them and try to operate across their whole spectrum of communication. No wonder we weren't able to get across anything but the most primitive exchanges, restricting ourselves to sound. It's been equivalent to restricting human communication to just the nouns in each sentence, while maintaining the sentence structure. "I'm very sorry," said Brait firmly. "I tell you, Mal, none of this makes any difference. The decision of the Foundation is based on financial reasons. They've got just so much money available to donate, and this station's allotment has already gone in other directions. There's nothing that can be done now." He pulled his arm free. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I'll be back in a week at the outside. You might be thinking of how to wind up things here." He turned with that and went away, around the building toward the parking spot of the station copters. Mal, stunned, watched the tall, slim, broad-shouldered figure move off into darkness. "It doesn't matter," said the gentle voice of Jane comfortingly at his ear. He jerked about and saw her facing him. "You won't need the Willerny funds anymore." "He told you?" Mal stared at her as she shook her head, smiling in the growing dimness. You heard? From way over there? Yes, she said. And you were right about Brait. I got your answer for you. He was a hatchet man sent here by the Willerny people to decide whether the station deserved further funds. But we've got to have them, Mal said. It won't take much more, but we've got to go into the sea and work out ways to talk to the dolphins in their own mode. We've got to expand to their level of communication, not try to compress them to ours. You see, this afternoon I had a breakthrough. I know, she said. I know all about it. You know? He stared at her. How do you know? You've been under observation all afternoon, she said. You're right. You did break through the environmental barrier. From now on, it's just a matter of working out methods. Under observation? How? Abruptly, that seemed the least important thing at hand. But I have to have money, he said. It'll take time and equipment, and that costs money. No. Her voice was infinitely gentle. You won't need to work out your own methods. Your work is done, Mal. This afternoon, the dolphins and you broke the bars to communication between the two races for the first time in the history of either. It was the job you set out to do, and you were part of it. You can be happy knowing that. Happy? He almost shouted at her suddenly. I don't understand what you're talking about. I'm sorry. There was a ghost of a sigh from her. We'll show you how to talk to the dolphins, Mal, if men need to, as well as some other things, perhaps. Her face lifted to him under the star-marked sky, still a little light in the west. You see, you were right about something more than dolphins, Mal. Your idea about the ability to communicate with another intelligent race, an alien race, was a test that had to be passed before the superior species of a planet could be contacted by the intelligent races of the galaxy. That was right, too. He stared at her. She was so close to him he could feel the living warmth of her body, although they were not touching. He saw her, he felt her, standing before him, and he felt all the strange, deep upwelling of emotion that she had released in him the moment he first saw her, the deep emotion he felt for her still. Suddenly, understanding came to him. You mean you're not from Earth? His voice was hoarse and uncertain. It wavered to a stop. But you're human, he cried desperately. She looked back at him a moment before answering. In the dimness, he could not tell for sure, but he thought he saw the glisten of tears in her eyes. Yes, she said at last, slowly. In the way you mean that, you can say I'm human. A great and almost terrible joy burst suddenly in him. It was the joy of a man who, in the moment when he thinks he has lost everything, finds something of infinitely greater value. But how? He said excitedly, a little breathlessly. He pointed up at the stars. If you come from some place up there, how can you be human? She looked down, away from his face. I'm sorry, she said. I can't tell you. Can't tell me? Oh, he said with a little laugh. You mean I wouldn't understand? No. Her voice was almost inaudible. I mean I'm not allowed to tell you. Not allowed. He felt an unreasoning chill about his heart. But Jane... He broke off, fumbling for words. I don't know quite how to say this, but it's important to me to know. From the first moment I saw you there, I mean, maybe you don't feel anything like this. You don't know what I'm talking about. Yes, she whispered. I do. Then, he stared at her. You could at least say something that would set my mind at rest. I mean, it's only a matter of time now. We're going to be getting together, your people and I, aren't we? She looked up at him for the last time then, and told him. He, having heard what she had to say, stood still, still as a stone, for there was nothing left to do, and she, turning slowly and finally away from him, went off to the edge of the pool and down the steps into the shallow water, where the dolphins came rushing to meet her, their foamy tearing of the surface making a wake as white as snow. Then the three of them moved, as if by magic, across the surface of the pool and out the entrance of it to the ocean. And so they continued to move off until they were lost to sight in darkness and the starlit, glinting surface of the waves. It came to Mal then, as he stood there, that the dolphins must have been waiting for her all this time. All the wild dolphins who had come to the station after the first two captives were set free to leave or stay as they wanted. The dolphins had known, perhaps for centuries, that it was to them alone on earth that the long-awaited visitors from the stars would finally come. You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.